The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan to be baptized by John. John tried to dissuade him. "It is I who need baptism from you," he said, "and yet you come to me." But Jesus replied, "Leave it like this for the time being. It is fitting that we should, in this way, do all that righteousness demands." At this, John gave in to him. As soon as Jesus was baptized, he came up from the water, and suddenly the heavens opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and coming down on him. And a voice from heaven spoke, "This is my Son, the Beloved. My favor rests on him." The Gospel of the Lord. Who are the people you expect to show you support, affection, and kindness in all your undertakings? Who are the significant persons in your life that you expect to hear them say to you, "You can do it. Be brave. I will be here for you"? In 1997, David Kelly, an American producer, released The Practice. It's a TV series. Have you heard of it? The Practice? You don't watch American TV series? You only watch The Brave and the Beautiful? Is it The Brave and the Beautiful? It's a story about Bobby Donnell, a lawyer who put up his own law firm. You can describe him as someone who is successful as a lawyer. He is what you usually describe as someone who is spiffy? Is it the right word, spiffy? I always like doing funerals because most of the people who come for funerals are always in their spiffy attire. He's spiffy, sleek young man in a suit, suave in his ways, and sophisticated in his choice of words. In one of its episodes, Bobby visits his dad, who is also working in a law firm. He has not been able to visit his dad for the past 7 or 8 years in that particular episode. It is understandable since he is putting up his own law firm. At the lobby of the law firm, where his dad is working, he is greeted by one of the senior lawyers. "How are you, Bobby?" "I'm doing well," Bobby said. "That's good to know. Your law firm has been receiving good reviews." He smiles, then he asks, "Have you seen my dad?" "He will probably be in the old boys' room." So Bobby went straight to the men's room, knocks on the half-open door, and called out, "Dad, are you here?" "Is that you, Bobby?" "It is I," Bobby replies. "Give me a second. I'm about to be done." Then from one of the toilet cubicles, his dad comes out while he mops the floor. He is the firm's janitor, the law firm's cleaner, and he has been working in that firm since Bobby was a kid. Bobby's dad is your typical company janitor, an old man in a blue uniform, stoops at all times, and pot-bellied. Are there any pot-bellied persons in this community? Are you also a janitor? Bobby's dad walks toward him and inquires, "What brought you here, Bobby? It had been quite a while since you made your last visit, 7 or 8 years. "Well," Bobby replied, "work. There had been a lot of things that came up. I heard that you had been very successful at work. People here talk about you and your work. Then Bobby looks at him in the eyes and asks him, do I make you proud? There was a heavy silence in the toilet. Then his dad's eyes started to become watery. Well, he said, I have always wanted to ask you the same question. Do I make you proud? Have you ever asked that question to someone? Do I make you proud? Most of us move through life feeling unloved, uncared for, because we never heard the words that we ought and need to hear from the very people we ought to hear from them. Sometimes they are just simply buggers. But most often than not, they just do not know how to say, I love you. A little love goes a long way. Many of us are guilty of taking people for granted. So it's good to acknowledge those who've impacted our lives and those whom we could not live without. Today's gospel teaches us a very fundamental reality that ought to operate in our relationships. Express your feelings of love and compassion to the significant people in your life. The Abba's words, the Father's words to His Son, to Jesus, this is my beloved Son, my favor rests on Him. The word son is a little bit problematic because if you read the Hebrew text, do you read the Hebrew text? No, you don't read Hebrew? Just the Australian English? In the Hebrew text, it's not actually son, it's servant. It will only have its nuancing when it was translated in Greek, because the Greek word pais, P-A-I-S, can be translated to servant or child. So the translation that we're using is my beloved son. But for any Hebrew thinker, it is significant because it brings to their memory the first reading that we have just heard about the suffering servant. And as we all know, the idea of servant is critical for any followers of the Christ coming from the Jewish tradition, because it links them with Isaiah's suffering servant, which we have just read in the first reading. Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom my soul delights. Moreover, the same reading outlines to the work, the mission, this beloved Son will be doing to bring justice to the nations, to serve the cause of rights, to open the eyes of the blind, to free captives from prison. But we know that the task at hand for this servant, this beloved Son, will not be easy. This servant would definitely work wonders. He made the blind see and the cripple walk. He fed thousands of people. He walked on water and commanded the strong wind and turned water into wine. But this same servant will not be accepted for doing the work the Father has missioned him. The servant's life, ministry, and miracles will seriously compromise the status quo that the cross became a necessary path for his mission. I think if Christ was made an Australian, they won't crucify him because he can turn water into wine. For someone who is giving life for the mission, this is not an easy task. But knowing that one is deeply loved, it actually gives you the strength to face the challenges the mission offers. This is my Son, my beloved, my favor rests on him. The Matthean account of Jesus' baptism triggers the beginning of the missionary activity. The Father's affirmation of the love God has for the suffering servant, the Son, gives the Son the strength and the courage to face the demands of the mission. This love will actually sustain Jesus when in the next verses following the gospel we have just heard, Jesus will be tested by Satan in the wilderness. Knowing that one is deeply loved, it actually gives you strength. Bobby Donnell longed for it. Do I make you proud? God the Father reminded the Son about it. You are my Son, my beloved. My favor rests on you. In your life today, what ways have you been affirmed and consoled by the love of the significant people in your life? In your life today, in what ways have you lovingly affirmed and consoled the significant people in your life?